Vice Chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Mark Warner of Virginia. I began by asking what he thought the Senate should be doing about General Flynn's discussions with the Russian ambassador.
Well, these discussions are very troubling. And the first thing we need to do is get to the facts. We've heard reports that he may have been making certain statements that were inappropriate to the Russian ambassador. We have not yet seen those transcripts. Once we see the transcripts, and if they prove, as the media has indicated, they would fall into part of the area that the investigation that we are putting forward by the Senate Intelligence Committee that's looking at contacts between former campaign officials and the Russian government, looking at Russian interference into the election in terms of spreading fake news, and obviously the selective hacking and leaking of information that favored Mr. Trump over Hillary Clinton. This General Flynn's actions would fall within this investigation, and we would need to get to the bottom of it. If the facts are as reported, then I think the committee needs to interview him.
How do you determine if the facts are as reported?
Well, we understand basic tradecraft, and this is one of the things that just amazes me, that someone with General Flynn's security clearances should know that if he's talking to a Russian ambassador, chances are those conversations are monitored. And if they have been monitored, at some point we need to see the transcript. Obviously, something has happened so that because General Flynn relayed one set of facts, and then as it became evident that it appeared that there were transcripts, he changed his story and then ended up resigning. If the transcripts reveal what the press has said, this raises very, very serious concerns about potentially an American who was not part of an administration at that point, actually trying to undermine then President Obama's sanctions against Russia, those very sanctions which were caused by the Russian interference in our electoral process.
There are also questions, Senator Warner, being raised, as you know, about whether the president knew about the conversations that General Flynn was having at that time, whether he condoned them. How do you find out the answer to that?
Well, that's further down the path, and we have to start with what Flynn said to the Russian ambassador, and it would be extraordinarily troubling, and I hope and pray that it's not the case that the president was somehow aware of these conversations, the president-elect at that point, because what you'd, in effect, would be happening would be you'd have someone that was not at that point actually the president trying to undermine the policies of then President Obama, who had put these sanctions in place because, quite honestly, it was the unprecedented action of Russians interfering in our elections. I still will always remember the head of the NSA, the head of the CIA, the head of the FBI, the director of national intelligence, all four of those individuals testifying in public and in private that they'd never seen a foreign government, an adversary in the case of Russia, try to interfere in such a major way in our elections. And if somehow someone was trying to undermine then President Obama's sanctions against that nation, that would be extraordinarily troubling.
I just talked to Senator James Risch, who's a Republican member of the Intelligence Committee. He said he's confident that this investigation can be carried out by the Senate Intelligence Committee, that you don't need an outside independent body, a commission of some sort. Are you equally confident?
Well, that's my hope. And again, I believe that the Intelligence Committee, which has jurisdiction, we're doing this bipartisan. I think the American public expect us to work on this kind of activity in a bipartisan fashion. We have access, we will get access to most of this intelligence. And I've said, and the chairman, Richard Burr, has said the same, we're going to follow this to where the intelligence leads. We're going to follow the facts no matter where they lead. If at any moment in time, though, that there is an effort to try to suppress facts or suppress intelligence, then I believe other members of the committee will call for a different kind of investigation, and we might go the route of an independent commission. But at this moment in time, I believe the Senate Intelligence Committee, bipartisan, going after the facts, is the right venue.
Are you satisfied right now, Senator, with the progress being made on the rest of this investigation, looking overall at Russian influence on the election?
remember, we're looking at three big areas. We're looking at contacts between campaigns and the Russians, both prior to and after the fact, as the case with Mr. Flynn. We're looking at the unprecedented amount of fake news that flooded our news coverage during the election cycle. I don't think most Americans realize there were literally 1,000 Russian internet trolls working in a single location in Russia trying to interfere with our elections, and they, I think, had major interference. And we're looking at the selective hacking of the DNC and John Podesta's emails and the leaking of that information. We've contacted all of our major intelligence agencies and said we need to see all the raw intelligence. We're starting that process to look through that intelligence. I wish it could move faster. I think the sooner we get to the bottom of this, the better. And I would even think the administration, if it removes the cloud that's hanging over this administration, I think they'd want us to do our job as expeditiously as possible also.
Senator Mark Warner, the ranking Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.